I'm Mark Gagan and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go. Release your underwriters to underwrite with Advantage Go's underwriting platform. As the global insurance market becomes more competitive, the first place to notice the change is usually the wholesale segment, because it's always at the margins where all the most dynamic pricing action occurs. But whilst falling rates can prove a headwind to growth, as long as submission flows hold up and deals keep being done, a more competitive market can be a more attractive one for new business, because it's more welcoming to innovative ideas. Today's guest is perfectly placed to see what's happening, because he runs a business with about $4 billion of wholesale premiums running through it. So that's why I'm delighted to welcome Nick Abraham, CEO of Amwins Global Risks, AGR, to the show. As the international subsidiary of one of the dominant trio of major US wholesale brokers, after entering the London market via strategic M&A, over the past decade AGR has grown its position rapidly to become a major force in the London and global wholesale markets. This discussion is very rich and deep in places, but it's also broad-ranging, moving from detail on AGR's overall strategy to the specific opportunities and challenges of current market conditions and the possibility of shifting alliances relating to retail broker consolidation, all the way through to the likely long-term impact of technological change on the way wholesale business will be transacted in the future. Nick is a charming and eloquent guest who's easygoing, fun and engaging. He's full of passion for the job, and this shines through in our interview. All this makes for a really enjoyable and informative episode. Enjoy the podcast. Nick, welcome to the Voice of Insurance.
Hey, Mark, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's really great. Well, we're sitting in your office. You're having me, which is fantastic. There's one of these beautiful offices in 22 Bishopsgate. Anyone out there who doesn't know you, why don't you introduce yourself to them?
Sure, absolutely. So I started my career or my journey of insurance about 24 years ago or so, studying at Troy University, which we always laugh is in LA, but not Los Angeles, as many people may think. It's in Lower Alabama, so part of the world that most people aren't familiar with. But the university is really very niche in that it has a insurance program that is heavily catered to specialty surplus lines curriculum. And so got into that program, started studying it.
What made you want to study insurance? Because I don't think many people do. So how did you know about it, and how did
Completely
you
fell into it? Completely fell into it. Studying accounting, and decided about 2/3 of the way through that wasn't for me. And the insurance professor's room was right next to the accounting professor. And so I got a chatting with her and decided that this was something very interesting, something that, to your point, not many people knew about. And so it was a really incredible opportunity to get in and study the business there. And then while I was studying insurance, I ended up getting an internship at Lloyd's in 2002.
Wow. That must have been a hell of a time to be there, because obviously we know what happened the year before.
Yeah, it was very interesting, to say the least. You could begin to sense something in the world changing, even at that very early stage of my career.
A very interesting time, because of course Bermuda was really coming strong, and there were a lot of people saying at the time that the London market was kind of days are numbered or whatever. Of course, again,
well, and here we are.
Yeah, never saying never in insurance is the absolute golden rule, I would say.
Never say never.
So you graduated and you started your career. Have you always been a broker, or did you want to be an underwriter?
No, I started on the underwriting side with Markel and moved to the Richmond, Virginia office and was there for several years. And then in 2021, I moved over to Amwins in the US with the Atlanta office there.
Well, tell us about Amwins Global Risks. What sort of scale have we got up to now? Because you're pretty big.
Yeah, we've grown quick. Amwins is good. We celebrated last year. We've put over $4 billion into the market, which is a really big milestone for our team. And so we celebrated that in August. We've grown pretty dramatically. When we think about our business, we think about it in really our three divisions. So we've got over $2 billion into the open market. We've got $2 billion of capacity building. And then we've got about $200 million in our underwriting division, which is our fastest growing division.
And that's obviously Amwins Global Risks.
Correct.
Where's the official boundary between Amwins and Amwins Global Risks?
Well, Amwins Global Risks is a part of Amwins. And one of the things, Mark, that we think is a bit of a misconception is that we are independent. We work closely, obviously, with our brethren in the United States, but only about a third of our business comes from the Amwins network in the U.S. So we are a worldwide global provider of insurance products.
So, for example, do you sometimes have retail brokers in the US who go straight to you rather than going through Amwins in the US, for example?
We do. And we're happy for those retailers that are coming to the London market. We're very happy to work with them directly. We also are very happy if they're most comfortable having their business go through a U.S. wholesale broker. We obviously have those relationships and can work with them in that capacity as well.
Well, you're sitting with your marketing team and you're saying, what do we want to be known for? What's the answer to that question? You're a very big broker, so presumably you have to be known for everything, or often with wholesale brokers, when you're a small wholesale broker, you can be known as being, the real specialist in something, like you're the helicopter guy,
Yep.
That kind of thing. Or are you just a specialist in almost everything?
Well, no, and it's tough to be a specialist in everything, but we're trying hard to do that. Specialization is such a big piece of what we do, and it's something that we focus on.
I suppose, you wouldn't come all the way to London to get someone to place your business unless there was something pretty special.
Correct. Yeah. And something unique about it that's bringing it here. And so we want our teams to be really focused on being experts and being able to provide that value. When you think about the industry as a whole, if you're truly adding value, you'll never get replaced. And so that's what we focus on. And we can chat as we go along about some of the tools that we give our teams. But we really, at the end of the day, want our brokers to be people that help solve problems. And we believe that putting the most specialized, knowledgeable person in front of the client is going to win the deal all the time.
So if someone said, yes, what do you do? You'd say, well, we pretty much do everything that's not ordinary, that doesn't fit into the box. We can pretty much do everything, would you say? Or is there anywhere that you still haven't got a specialism that you think, well, we must work on that, or we'd love to hire a team that does that because that's one of the only strings missing from our bow?
Well, there's still some areas that we'd like to get stronger and broader. We realize that relationships are such a key driver to this business. And, we think sometimes that there are opportunities to bring in a new teammate that might work with a specialization or a niche of the market that we don't work with directly. And so we're hyper-focused on that. We think about the platform all the time and how the platform enables our brokers to be the best version of themselves. We've grown not only from a premium and revenue perspective through the years, but we've really also grown in the breadth that we're able to provide. And it's been from bringing in experts in various niches to support our business and to help grow.
So the message out there is still that there's new specialisms. And of course, new specialisms are coming up all the time because the world's changing all the time.
Yep.
I've just done a load of podcasts on data centers. I didn't know anything about them. I just thought, well, it's just a load of computers in the building. And I didn't realize, particularly now with the AI and the boom, this is becoming such a huge thing, and it's becoming an insurance problem that needs to be solved. And therefore, there are going to be people who really know everything about that.
There are. I think back to when cyber was
it wasn't when I started insurance, or you and I started insurance, it wasn't really a thing. In 2001, at least the internet sort of existed, but it wasn't really that ubiquitous problem that we've now got.
No, and it was one of those things where it came around and people were interested in it. And
I remember there was the "I love you" bug or whatever it was. And I think it's just pretty harmless. It just said "I love you" or something. That was it.
It's gotten way more nefarious since then. The good old days, right? But you think about that and just how the evolution of that product and how it began with people that were passionate for providing solutions for problems that ultimately evolved and emerged over the last 2 decades. And when you think about data centers and all the heavy computing that's going on, there are risks that are so specific to that you need someone that understands the business itself to begin to put together an appropriate response from an insurance perspective.
That's the great thing about being in your world, is you think, well, the world's never going to get any more simple. It's just going to get more complicated. So there's always going to be something new for us to be thrown out of the sort of spun out of the wheel of insurance that just doesn't quite fit in with the standard products.
Correct. I had a chance to spend some time with some young people on Friday, just that were in the office learning about the business. And they asked one of them a little bit of a typical question. What is the most important trait that I could have as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old? As standby, I think curiosity. If you're curious not only about the insurance world and the mechanisms, but the world around you, because everybody needs insurance. And so that was the theme that we continue to push on, is just really being inquisitive and thoughtful and looking at all the aspects of risk all the way around.
You really want people who sort of, pulled apart their record player, or, pulled apart their CD player, or, pulled apart their iPhone when they were young and tried to work out how to put it back together again.
Exactly.
Yeah, people like to know how things work. And then, of course, how they go wrong, of course, and then how you can stop them going wrong.
It is interesting. It's if you understand how it works, then you can understand the critical points that can fail and put it together, and you understand how to treat it.
Actually, how many staff are you up to now?
We're almost 900. We have around 400 here in London. We have about 200 plus in Cheltenham in our service center. And then we have 200 either working from home or around the UK as well.
Something amazing about Cheltenham seems to be that it is the sort of UK capital of service provision to the insurance industry.
I'm learning that quickly. I've made a couple trips out there, enjoyed spending time with our team. Yeah.
I just remember as a broker, then we used to get calls from people in Cheltenham.
Oh, did you?
When you'd place something, and it would be with different insurance companies in the London market. And they all seem to have a service provision department in Cheltenham. I don't know why. There must be something in the water there.
Yeah. We've got a nice team there, and it's grown as our business has grown as well. So it's always nice to.
Well, people out in the West Country are very friendly and
very nice. Yeah, very very good time.
They're less stressed. I think that's it.
It could be. Maybe their commutes look a little different in there, but it's fun nonetheless.
You've got G Global in your name. What about your global strategy?
Yeah, so we do business around the world, and our professional team has done a lot. We do a lot in Canada, Australia, really Africa. Global's a bit of who we are. We are heavy U.S. focused and balanced. About 50% of our business, pretty much aligned with Lloyd's, comes from the U.S., but the other 50% comes from around the globe.
That 50% number never seems to change. Since I've been looking at it closely for the last 20 years, that 50% London market volume coming from the US seems to be pretty much rock solid. It just never changed.
Do you think it will? Well, I'm asking the questions now.
Well, I suppose it probably will, though. It probably will, won't it? I mean, with the world is changing. We're talking about a multipolar world. Maybe it will change.
Yeah.
Maybe it's up to us to change that balance ourselves by seeking one other way of looking at the London market, because I used to look at it from a non-Anglo-Saxon focus, from a Hispanic point of view. The only complaint we would have as working for a Spanish broker would say, these guys, they've got the English-speaking peoples, they've got US, Canada, Australia, South Africa. They've got the Anglo-Saxon world sewn up, or they've got great cultural affinity with that. But actually, do they really understand? Do they want to push out to where it's a bit harder? Well, obviously, with this cultural and language barriers, then I suppose that's something that we've got to see.
It is, and that's something we think about in our business. We've actually hired a Spanish speaker specifically to support our LATAM business that we've built and continue to have a good relationship with our teams there.
Yeah, so outside that core, where's most exciting? And also, will you be looking to put local offices on the ground there? Or, of course, London's not the only wholesale insurance hub in the world, and others are developing. Are any of those attractive?
From a strategy standpoint, we think that the areas that we're in, we can double down and grow our business. That being said, we are open to opportunities as they come through. It's that portion of the market where we're starting to see deal flow and we're not opposed to going anywhere. But again, we think being highly focused on areas that you have capability and have the knowledge and know-how will lead to the best result. And so we're not looking to plant flags all over the place, but we are open to geographic expansion as it presents itself.
It sounds like it's going to be very rational, because it's easy to plant loads of flags around the world, and then you suddenly realize I'm spending a fortune on office rent and local taxes before I've even produced any business.
Correct. Certainly rational is what we would look to be on anything. These days, if I found somewhere that had 12 hours of sunlight, I think I'd be open to planting a flag there just to do a little work, but it's not in our desire to put offices all over.
So at this time of year, you'd much rather be in Lower Alabama than in London?
I would, from a temperature and a sunlight standpoint, although there are days where it's colder there than it is here. And so it is what it is. Enjoy the moment that you're in and live the best of that.
Well, yes, because in the US, all the mountain ranges run from north to south. So there's nothing in the way.
Right.
From the North Pole, if it decides to blow from the north quite hard, it can get down to the Gulf of Mexico and be, as we've seen, and we had some frost a couple of years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, I think it snowed in Atlanta yesterday, actually. So it was wild.
That must be a real shock, because that's not supposed to be cold.
It tends to throw the city into a bit of chaos as you go through, for sure.
Right. Well, looking at the global market, we've just come through the reinsurance renewal. Obviously, the facultative reinsurance renewal has been particularly soft. A lot of resetting going on. Certainly, competition's returned with a bang.
Yes.
How's that affecting you when you're sort of looking at your budgets and trying to grow? Is it going to make organic growth harder to come by?
It will. And the lift from rate is always helpful. We've grown, when we kind of look at it, the rate provided about a third of our growth over the last 5 years. So we know that that's not going to be there. Now, when things become more competitive, and to the things that you and I spoke about earlier, when you have expertise and people that have been through cycles before, they find new ways to maneuver and operate. And so we are seeing wins on new business just because when submissions come into us, we're able to maybe look at them a little differently than they have been in the past and use some of the tools and the openness to looking at risk differently that's there because of the amount of competition that's there.
Yeah. So I suppose, yes, it's harder because obviously your book gets attacked by your competitors.
Yep.
Every renewal suddenly becomes a surprise. They think, I didn't realize we were going to be under competition there, or when it was before, the question was just trying to get it placed. And now the question is trying to hang on to it. But of course, it does also mean when you have underwriters who are more competitive, they're much more open to new ideas, aren't they?
Yes. And we've got scale and major trading relationships with so many in the market that we're able to anticipate about where renewals are going to land. So we're able to be in a good position playing defense when we need to. But most of the time, we're also able to communicate to the underwriters where we think things are going to go, which allows us to play a little bit of offense on our own book as well.
Yeah, yeah. Is that down to technology? Is that down to having, obviously, you've got that $4 billion premium.
Yep.
Is it because now you really know how to slice and dice it? You know exactly where that's going. You can really analyze that book.
If I knew exactly where it was going, we would be way bigger. We never know. When Amwins was started, data was such a cornerstone of our being. And so we focused on data and analytics for the last 25 years. We're really excited. We're launching a proprietary system here that'll help us. We think we've got best in market data already. As we run through a full renewal cycle through AmLink is what we call it. It's based off of the system that's used in the US. The analytics that we'll have from our book, we really think will help us not only do a better job of selling, but sharing with our market partners trends and things that we're seeing that'll help them be more efficient as well. And so data is absolutely the tool, and everybody speaks about it, of course, but looking at practical ways to utilize that in your business is an absolute competitive differentiator.
Yeah, because it's not just about price either. Although, of course, I remember when the market hardened, 5 or 6 years ago, it took a lot of people by surprise.
It did.
And a lot of their clients weren't very happy because they said, well, hang on, but you're supposed to know what's happening in this market. And you didn't tell me, you didn't warn me that everything was going to triple in price. If I'd known that would have been helpful.
I remember very vividly having that discussion. Will there ever be another hard market? And it felt like every response was, no, we've evolved, we're different. Things aren't the way that they were. There'll be spikes, but there'll never be kind of this full-on hard market. And they were wrong. As we've come through that, it's been amazing. So I do think it caught the industry by a bit of a surprise.
So perhaps if we ever catch anybody in the next 12 months saying, well, there'll never be a soft market like there was in 1997 or whatever, name your favorite last soft market period.
Yeah.
They're probably wrong too, aren't they?
Never is a very strong word. And I tend to not use that one. And
as a broker, that is a very, very wise thing to do. I remember, when you say you'll never get it cheaper, and then that's the day you lose it, don't you? For someone, and someone does it half the prices, and it makes you look really stupid.
It does. The absolutes are there. I think if I've learned anything, this business is cyclical, and it is subject to basic economic principles of supply and demand. And when you see the supply come in, if demand's static, the pricing equilibrium goes from there. And if supply becomes restricted, pricing goes up. So
But also, I suppose, with the data there, can you get more insights? So they're almost, not to say you're not doing the underwriter's job for them, but you're really helping. You're saying, do you know, we've analysed the claims data here. We can see that there's a problem. There's something common. They're all using the same turbine and all breaking in the same place. This valve seems to be a problem. Do you get to that kind of level of granularity?
Yes, conceptually, once we are able to
and then you can have a more grown-up conversation with the underwriter.
You get it at the high class level, at the beginning when you roll through, but then you begin to pick up trends. As you're able to dissect your book and look at it bit by bit, you're able to start to ask those questions. Going back to the initial trend of curiosity, you begin to question why things are happening and what makes a better risk than another, and be able to tell that story a little bit better to your underwriting team.
Yep. And then obviously to the client and say, well, we've noticed that if you stop using that turbine, I know it's probably expensive to replace it, but if you replaced it, we'd probably get you a better deal. And also you'd be happier because it won't break down so often.
Exactly.
There's nothing more added value than that as a broker. I suppose it's the absolute ideal, isn't it?
It is.
The broker really knows your stuff.
Right.
Then knows the insurance stuff on top. Perfect. What about the submission flows? It's one thing having a soft market, but for me, I think when you sit in London sometimes, we're at the end of the chain. And when the market is really soft, you can notice there's not so much actual business coming here. And then that's the moment when you know it's going to be really tough because a smaller number of deals come through, so they're going to be even more competitive.
Yep.
What's that like at the moment in terms of submission flows?
Submission flow is good.
Oh, that's healthy then.
It is. And that goes back to, I think, the commentary around finding opportunities to look at risks a little different to help provide alternative solutions from what our insureds and retail partners have seen historically. We're still seeing opportunities, and we're cognizant that those opportunities, we may get to that point where not as much is coming to London, but for the time being, we're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of recognition that London is a competitive place. And so there is that element of a desire to come into the London market, anticipating that there may be a better deal that gets put together.
Do you think that London's perceived as being more competitive than it used to be? Whereas you could say 30 years ago it was a market of last resort for many people. It's because obviously there's so much friction in getting the business here, adding lots more commission. These days, do you think we're more competitive here, sitting in London, partly because of digital?
I do. And I think that risk treatment's gotten so much more sophisticated that there's a view, particularly speaking from my US background, there's a view that London is a source of capacity, which of course it is. And there's a way to utilize distribution and technology to be able to access it more efficiently than historically. And so I think there's an appreciation for what the London market brings. We're seeing play out right now.
Yes, it seems to be a very exciting time at the moment, particularly when you've got new and more efficient forms of capital coming into Lloyd's via London Bridge 2 and all sorts of things. And again, that could be accessed digitally. It seems, something that you couldn't have imagined this 30 years ago.
I think it'd be tough to. I think it's tough. And I think that, again, going back to creativity, as we are looking to provide risk treatment solutions, the London market presents an opportunity to be creative in how you approach those.
So you've been part of this with the Amplify facility. How important is that for your growth?
We think it's critical. Now, that being said, we want to manage it tightly because we can see how things could go awry. And we think that it's a tool.
Well, now the market's softening, obviously. It's the thing, every broker has burnt a facility once in their lifetime, haven't they? And you realize, now it's gone. It's gone, isn't it?
Yeah, our goal is to manage it well through the cycle. And so we think that it's a tool. We don't think it's some panacea that solves every problem. And so we want to make sure that we're good stewards, that we manage it appropriately now so that it'll carry through to the next cycle as well.
Is it about providing a kind of base level? And is it really about keeping the cost down? Hopefully you can pass some of that on to the customer.
I think it's keeping the cost contained. I think it's keeping discipline around what enters into it and how it's deployed. I think it's a function of getting a broad buy-in. You want to have that appropriate indexation. You want to set yourself away from the adverse selection that could occur. I think it's really being able to kind of smooth it across the entire portfolio. And again, as long as you don't have too much of it exposed, then it should just ebb and flow with the market as it goes.
And what do you think is the sort of optimal, because bearing in mind, of course, let's say all the top 10 brokers in London have got some kind of facility, and if they haven't, they're working on one right now. You're managing that flow of business into London. What percentage do you think should be managed by you? And of course, there are market-led facilities as well, different facilities, consortia, all sorts of things. What sort of percentage of that overall placement do you think should be?
For us, we think somewhere between 25% to a third makes sense. And I realize others have more, some are more stringent than that, but we think that number represents the facilitation of coverage, but still allows underwriting to occur.
I suppose it's like a non-controlling interest, isn't it? It's like a large minority shareholding. If it gets over 51, then there's something weird's going to happen.
Yeah. And so we've wanted to remain in control of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I suppose it's fundamentally important to make sure that there are lead underwriters out there. And of course, as a broker, that there are alternative lead underwriters also out there who are healthy and ready to take on the lead if that lead decides not to do it anymore.
Well, again, and if we ask ourselves sometimes when things are going well, what could go wrong? And losing that facility could go wrong. And so we want to insulate ourselves from that kind of doomsday draconian type scenario. But also we want to be able to respond to it as things in the lead market change and as the market evolves as a whole.
You've already mentioned MGAs are your fastest growing portion of the book.
Yep.
How important is that going forward?
It's critical. We think that it's a way for us to diversify and to grow, certainly by feeding AGR brokers as well, but we're also there to support the market as a whole. And we have good distribution outside of Amwins Global Risk that's coming in through our MGA platforms of Unicorn, Contour. We're invested in those. We're launching. We're real excited. We've got 2 new products that'll come online this year with a cyber facility and a financial institutions facility as well.
And so we should think of them as sort of large MGAs that are going to have different units and attract underwriting talent from the market to come and join and share in the profits of their own unit type thing.
Yeah, I think as people get creative and people want to chart their own path, that's certainly the way that it was built, was to be there to facilitate that, using the same tools that we use in our broking basis, heavily dependent on data, and technology to create efficiency, we can use our relationships to source the capacity. And again, when we're looking at these, it's the proverbial chicken or egg. Do you want to build the product or do you want the underwriter? And I think in so many ways, it starts with the individual themselves and their underwriting acumen. And then you back into kind of the vision for the product and how it may go as well.
It seems such a large growth in MGAs over the last 20 years, let's say. Do you think this is a permanent change in the way insurance is transacted?
Permanent is one of those words, never impermanent.
Or something that could ebb and flow.
I think there will be ebb and flow, but at a micro level. I think they're here to be there because, again, the capital that's coming to the market is looking to be deployed. And I think we won't see necessarily the massive retrenchment that we've seen in the past, particularly if we're good. And I think that's the thing that separates us. And I would hope that anybody that's in my position that's answering this question would say the same thing. We want to be good underwriters. We want to produce above market results because we think that's how you sustain and keep capacity. We're looking long term in the way. I think even if you look at the cyber product that we're building, the last thing the market needs is another SME cyber deal. But we think that we have the right distribution, the right business plan to be able to distribute it now. And should there be a change in market, we think that we will produce results that'll retain our capacity and be able to really grow should there be a disruption.
It's a good example, isn't it? Cyber, we know this is a great product and it's got a great future. But actually, in the present, it's under-delivering on the growth that it's supposed to be giving us. That everyone's supposed to be clamoring to buy this product, but it doesn't seem to have been sold.
We still have curious buyers.
There's so much opportunity, clearly, in the US market, which is the most developed and the most mature. It's still incredibly immature.
I think that if you talk about the cyclicality of the business, I don't think there's going to be a retrenchment away from the cyber exposure. I mean, that market will continue to grow. And as cyber criminals become more and more creative and challenging, I mean, it's going to be systemic for our entire culture.
So again, if you can find a way of what you believed, a way of doing things better, more sustainably, that's better for the client, then there's going to be room for it.
I think so. If you add value, you should always be part of the deal.
That's really interesting, something that I always want to ask people about. As we digitize this market and it becomes theoretically possible to press a couple of buttons in LA, Los Angeles or Lower Alabama, doesn't really matter, and place business and interact with the London market because it's all digital and everything just flies through the ether. In a world where the transaction effectively is kind of free, but it's not quite free, but there's infrastructure that's already there. We've paid for that infrastructure. You don't have to pay minimum $1,000 brokerage every time or $5,000 brokerage, whatever it is these days, to access the London market. Ultimately, how do you react to that kind of world? There was a kind of class of EC3 London wholesale broker that was very much against that idea. That the guy in LA shouldn't be allowed to press a button to go straight to the London underwriter because that might cut me out of the equation. Right. But I want him to pick up the phone and send the thing to me. And I want to be the only person who can access this market. What you've already said about added value, it sounds like you probably think slightly differently, but I wouldn't want to put words in your mouth because obviously, as we've seen with stockbroking, for example, things used to be sort of £20 for a transaction. You'd have to pick up your phone, talk to the stockbroker, and it was all a bit clunky. These days, of course, people are just pressing buttons and they're not actually even being charged anything. They're being kind of remunerated on the deal flow that they're providing. But people still need financial advice.
They do.
And so there's added value to be done there still, but just because the transaction doesn't cost anything anymore or that it's not explicitly £20 a go anymore, there's still a job for a stockbroker.
Right. Insurance intrinsically is a relationship between the insured and the ultimate risk bearer that in the event of a covered loss, they'll be there to indemnify them. So I think to your initial question, there will always be a degree of value that's placed on having a relationship beyond the buttons, beyond the screen. I would challenge that everybody should be evaluating their value and looking at creative ways to add value. And sometimes that value is facilitating the matching of desire to transfer risk with desire to take risk. And so being thoughtful about that. Again, London's a great platform to be able to do that. Defending yourself just to make sure you still have a job is challenging as the world gets smarter and faster and quicker.
And obviously, just because you can go direct doesn't mean you should, because from the insurer going direct to that LA, again, they need to suddenly realize that they have to do a huge ton of service.
Yep.
And it's got to be compliant with local California or Alabama regulation that they didn't know anything about and pay local taxes and all the other things. The thing that the broker does that
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's what I pay all the commission for. I can't do it any cheaper. It would be far better. And I can actually deal with a broker who knows this business better than I do, or as well as I do, and knows this client. And we can talk around it. And also someone who's aggregating a lot of information, whose book is as big as mine or bigger than mine, so can help me understand this risk better, etc. So again, the added value is always going to be there, isn't it?
Cost is part of the equation, but there's a reason why the Ritz-Carlton still exists. When you go on holiday, you're not looking to stay necessarily at the cheapest, most economical place. You may travel a little differently than you would on some of the discount airlines. So when you equate that into securing the future of your business or your personal assets, there is a degree of recognition around the value that's being added.
Again, yes, you need to add value. Otherwise, why would you get paid?
Yeah. And I think that plays into the paranoia that most brokers have. And so you're continually becoming innovative and looking for ways.
But then that's a good paranoia to have, isn't it? That's the paranoia you should have, because the opposite of that is complacency.
100%.
You should never have that.
100%.
The good paranoia is saying, have I really added enough value? Have I really, really earned this brokerage? Because if I haven't, someone else is going to figure it out.
Yep.
And it's going to get taken away from me. I mean, I know it looks like a really juicy free lunch at the moment, but tomorrow, within 3 years, it'll all be gone.
I think it was that Jeff Bezos that said margin is opportunity, and I think that if you're continually adding value, it's really hard to cut you out.
Yep. On that question, the London market wholesale broking scene has really consolidated a lot. Obviously, AGR did acquire to get scale in the London market, but I suppose that's not consolidation because you didn't take out a competitor, for example. Do you think there's any more of that to come now? It's one of these sort of never say never things. I always feel, particularly as a journalist, thinking, well, what is left to be done in terms of consolidation in the wholesale space in London particularly? You think there isn't any more to be done, but that's probably wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's probably still some stuff to come. And I think there will be others that will spawn, and it'll be a never-ending cycle in that way. I do think there will be some opportunities, and we'll read some headlines in the next 3 years, 5 years, somewhere in there.
Is it partly because some of those have got the sort of ownership structures that they have? They're likely to seek a liquidity event at some point, I suppose.
It could be.
Never say never.
Never say never.
Though you've done very well organically. Once you bought that platform, we wouldn't define Amwins or AGR as an acquisition vehicle at all.
I don't think so, which actually, as you're asking this, is funny because Amwins collectively has been an acquirer through the business and how we built the platform. It's interesting that acquisitions have come in, but then they've acclimated. So we're all on one system, we carry one brand. In London, I do think in the 13 years since we partnered with THB, we haven't grown this business via mass acquisition.
No.
It's been a lot of organic. We've had a few, but it's been kind of a bolt here and a bolt there. And all of a sudden you look up and you got a pretty big business.
So it sounds like that's what's likely to continue.
I think so. Again, we're opportunistic. Discipline is something that we focus on as well. And we have a vision for what we want to be. We've established ourselves in many ways to that. We want to be the largest independent wholesale broker in the London market. And I think that as we continue to go down this journey, we'll look for ways to add on should the right opportunity come our way.
Broking doesn't stand still, as we've been saying. There's probably way more consolidation has happened on the retail side. That throws a lot of balls up in the air.
It gets tricky.
Landing in interesting places, and alliances are going to be shifting. How's it affecting your business here? Because particularly within that core US retail, it's been a huge amount going on the last 12 months.
It's tricky. I mean, there are situations where new relationships come in and want to go back to either their captive or their existing placement. We've worked hard with a lot of our insureds for many, many years to build programs for them through different market cycles. And so we do see a opportunity to stay with those, but it becomes more challenging as consolidation happens.
Yeah, but then that's just the way life is. You've just got to deal with what you've got to deal with.
It is.
If there are new alliances and you're going to get shut out of that one, that probably also means that new opportunities open up somewhere else.
Yep, exactly. And that sounds redundant in so many ways, but we can demonstrate where we've added value, and in many times that's appreciated. And so it gives us the opportunity to work through the business for another account renewal.
Yeah, and also things are very sticky in some ways. At the real business end, if you have the absolute expert in that field, the business finds its way back to you anyway, because they find that, wow, it was better when we did it that way.
Yeah, well, and we think many times, Mark, that the opportunity to solve a problem for a customer, again, you demonstrate your value, but you really build that retention. And we see, particularly with some of the sophisticated insurers, the large buyers that make their way into the London market, they appreciate that if you've done it for them once, you're going to be able to do it for them again. Now, they hold you accountable, but past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. But we think that we can give them the assurance that if we've performed for you once, we're big enough, scaled enough, equipped enough to perform for you again.
Yeah, it's interesting because the competitive nature of the world does mean, you can't run a business by edict. You could be the biggest retailer in the world and have your own kind of placement operation here in London, your whole wholesale to your own retail network. But if you don't actually have the best talent in that very specific risk class, then you're going to be at a disadvantage because all the competitors will gang up and they will find that Amwins guy who used to place it. And then the competitors will have an advantage and they'll win the account. And then you wonder why you did it that way.
Yeah. And that's the fun thing about this. Everybody runs their business the way that makes sense for them. And
so, if you don't have the business, then you don't have the business.
Right. But I do think your point is very true that many times, and I would argue maybe even most times, talent is sought. And so, if we have best in class, best equipped, and good technology to make it efficient, there are opportunities for us to win.
What about AI? You've invested a lot in technology, always have good technological platforms. Now that we're beyond the sort of, hey, we're experimenting with AI, we're actually trying to embed it. From your perspective, where have you had the best results?
The best results come from the desk traders. We were very innovative in opening up Copilot to everyone. I mean, that's basically the entry cost now, is giving everybody access to those tools. What we found was our frontline users, from doing some simple stuff, creating SOVs, creating consistent documents,
schedule of values.
Yes.
Yep.
We've been able to do some of that. And really our emphasis at a full scale technology point is to implement our system. And then from there, we'll build AI technology that'll be applied more broadly across the group there. But, it's here to stay. Is it going to replace us all? Stay tuned. But I think it will greatly facilitate the placement of insurance and, again, create efficiency for us.
So at the moment, it's really been more of an efficiency play, doing those jobs that are a real pain, with 1,000 lines in a spreadsheet and getting something to really run through it and check it. And
concurrency language, looking at all those things that are just so tedious and require so much human capital. And frankly, our goal is to take that human capital and redeploy it in other ways. If you can run it through some kind of AI tool to have it ensure that the lines are accurate and consistent, then we can have that individual that was going to spend their whole day doing that go and working on something else value added.
Something, place more business, find better ways of doing things.
Yep.
But at the moment, it seems to be that it's more in that kind of getting rid of the frictional pain rather than in the high added value stuff. You haven't been using AI to work out better ways of placing things.
Yeah, in some ways we have, just in kind of taken what we have from our portfolio and looking at most consistent or most highly likely place to go. But we're still experimenting with it. We're still early days. There are a lot of theories out there and a lot of people looking at interesting ways to deploy AI. And we're certainly meeting and having those discussions with everyone to begin to picture what we want it to look like in our way.
One question I forgot to ask is, where and what kind of classes and geographies are you finding the most exciting growth prospects for the next couple of years?
I would say our capacity building, and again, a lot of that's the market cycle, has been really, really busy for the last 9 months. We've seen new opportunities. The rise of the MGA we discussed earlier, we're seeing opportunities to source capacity there. Canadian business, Australian business, from a geographic standpoint, those have been places for us that we've won pretty successfully. And then product-wise, we see the marine hull and war space as being a growth area for us. Casualty, both U.S. and international casualty, still seems to be a market that's reasonably firm. And we are, dare I say it, cautiously optimistic that some of the professional liability lines that have been so soft for so long are at least along a floor at the moment.
So again, you might get a bit of tailwind from the rate, ultimately.
I'm laughing because any of my colleagues that hear this that operate in those lines are going to march to my desk immediately. But we've heard enough that we think there's at least a floor forming.
Floor has been found, and yes, it's being
potentially
bumped along. Of course, the trouble with insurance is we know that we might find the floor, but we're quite good at crashing right through it.
Just go through with a jackhammer.
Ow, that hurt. But hey, now we're on the other side. It's not so bad.
Yep, exactly.
Nick, thanks so much for coming on with insurance. I think I've run through my questions.
Yeah, Mark, thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this program. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry.
The Voice of Insurance is produced in association with Advantage Go. Release your underwriters to underwrite with Advantage Go's underwriting platform.
Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.